Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first, I wanted to apologize for not being here earlier in the hearing. I'm chairman of the House Small Business Committee, and one of my subcommittees had a hearing going on, and it's tough to be in two places at once, although we all struggle with that on a routine basis around here. And I want to thank Ms. Bass for that invitation to visit her district, and we've discussed this, and I absolutely intend to do that. And perhaps back in my district, I represent most of the city of Cincinnati, and we have our issues there as well, and we'd like to learn from some of the successes that you've had, and perhaps we can take those back to my district. So I'm looking forward to that. It's just a matter of coordinating the time. And we have traveled to Iraq together before, and so Ms. Bass, I consider her a good friend as well as a colleague on this committee. Just a couple of quick questions. The first of all, it's my understanding that that incarcerated gang members are using contraband cell phones in prisons, various prisons, to conduct all sorts of illicit gang activities outside the prison walls. And it's not just gang members. I mean, adult criminals are doing this as well, including drug trafficking, murder, witness intimidation, and on and on. And there have been some cutting-edge technological improvements that we have now. A continuous wave beacon technology is my understanding of one of those technologies. And I would just, I'm not sure, which I'll just open it up, whoever would like to take that. Could you discuss that? And if somebody else has already asked this question, I apologize, but anybody want to take that on?
Happy to take it. Congressman, yes, contraband cell phones, all kinds of items being smuggled into prisons and to jails enables and emboldens these not only in jail gangs, but also the gangs that they deal with outside of the jail. It's not only dangerous to the people on the street, but it's also dangerous to the guards that are inside the prisons as well. It is a problem that we are working with. We're working with our state and local partners to make sure that we have the ability to reduce that. On many of the wiretaps that I read, at least federally, when we see that there's a cell phone that's being used in a prison or in an area where there are inmates, we make sure that we notify our state and local authorities, and we work with it that way. But it is a significant problem that we're working on.
Thank you. I was involved and actually introduced a bill called Girls Count Act. Marco Rubio introduced it over in the Senate. It became law. What this did is, on a worldwide basis, there were 50 or so million, especially young girls, that never got birth certificates, and so they couldn't get government papers, and they were targeted because they really couldn't identify, who these girls were. They were sold off by families, a whole range of pretty horrific stuff. And I know that the gangs here in the United States have been involved in sex trafficking, and especially young girls. Do you know if gangs are they targeting any, is this occurring where women are brought into the country targeted because of their lack of birth certificates or government documentation? Does anybody know if that is that something that's occurring? Captain Marks?
Yes, sir. So the criminal street gangs in the United States are targeting homegrown girls. So we have a huge vulnerable population out there that have been victims of abuse or neglect their entire lives. They're experts at smelling out and finding those girls and targeting those girls. So all of the victims that they're exploiting are domestic females.
Okay, thank you. My final question, I got like 1 minute here. I was in Guatemala and Honduras last year, and we had a real problem on our southern border where unaccompanied young people were coming and flowing over our borders. And what I was told down there is one of the principal problems, a lot of these young people were fleeing the gangs back in their communities, and the parents were sending them to try to get them away from this. And I've heard a number of news articles where there's certain cities where we've seen gangs targeting kids very aggressively to try to bring them in and intimidating them if they don't get into the gangs. Would somebody like to comment on that? I see Mr. Blanco, you nodding, so.
Who wants to field the question? But that as you've mentioned, Congressman, that nails it on the head. You'll see many of these international gangs, for example, MS-13, targeting their very own people because they're vulnerable. not only are they vulnerable in their countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, but when they're here, they're vulnerable because they have family members back in those countries. So they not only intimidate the young women here, but they intimidate the family members back there. It is a vicious cycle. We are working very hard with our foreign counterparts and our local and domestic law enforcement to see what kinds of measures we can take to help them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.